Hi, this is Dave. I work in E1 support, and I'm going to do a quick session on tips you can use to speed up Smart Connect or speed up your integrations. So the first tip is to delete any maps you aren't using. When Smart Connect opens, it reads the setup information for all the maps. So if you have 1,000 maps in there, versus having just 10 maps, it's going to take way longer to open up Smart Connect. So just launching it is going to go slow when you have a lot of maps. So what I do a lot of times is I will come in here and sort this by run number. And so you can see here at the top, I got a bunch of maps that have run 0 times. Never been run, just created, but not used at all. Well, I could actually delete every single one of those maps. Probably were created just for testing. And then if we look further down, I even see some maps that have only been run 1 time, and they all were run June 1st, 2017. So it looks like someone was doing some initial data loads. So these maps will probably never run again. They use them for initial data loads. They don't need these. I would delete those as well. What you can do, instead of deleting the maps, let's say you might want to use the map again, you can actually export the map from the export window. You can select the maps you want to save, and then this will generate a file. I'll wait here till it finishes. It took a while, but it's probably because I have too many maps. So we're just going to export this. And then I could choose all the maps that I want to save in my export file and then export these. And once I know I have those safely saved, all I have to do is save this file, make sure I keep it somewhere, and then I can delete the maps that aren't being used. So that'll help with opening Smart Connect in general. The second thing that typically I see problems with is key fields in maps. And a lot of times it seems like people go overboard on their key fields. So when we go in here, you'll notice I'm doing a bulk data load from a SQL table from the RM101. I'm feeding it into another Dynamics company. So I only have customer number as key field. A lot of times I will come in here and every single field will be marked cust number, cust name, address 1, address 2, address 3, city, state, zip. Every single field is marked as a key field. Well, having more key fields than necessary is going to slow your integration down, because when the data source runs, it's grouping by everything that you've picked as a key field. So if you selected 100 fields as key fields, it's doing 100 group bys to get the data, and most likely it's going to show the same exact data as if you only pick custom number, since we know this field is unique in GP. So very few cases do I see where you need more than one key field. Seen maybe 2 or 3 at the most, but a lot of times you can get by with one key field. And then the other thing to note with key fields is in your mapping, you always should group by the same fields that you selected as key. So I have the group data here checked, and I have the customer number checked because that's my key field. If you start selecting more fields in here or less fields in here, not only can it make the map run faster or slower, but it can make it do records like over and over again. You know, if you got too many fields, it'll do like, you'll end up creating like a join basically, and it runs a lot of excess records. So keep the key fields and the group by fields the same, and try to limit the number that you use. 1, 2, 3 at the most. Typically, if you need more than 3 key fields, you should probably change the way the data is being outported. The next thing that I always have people do, so this tip will help speed up the actual maps themselves. Opening Smart Connect, this won't affect that, but this is affecting the actual map run itself. So the other thing I see a lot is people selecting way more fields than they need in their data source. So like I did right here, my select statement is select star from RM 101. So that's a lot of data. You know, it's a lot of fields, I don't know, 70, 80 fields. So if I'm only using 2 or 3 of those fields, I'm just wasting time getting everything. If all I need are 2 or 3 fields, I should actually limit my source query using those. So if we go to my mapping and take a look at my mapping, the only 2 fields I got mapped are cust name and cust number. And I'm setting inactive to a local constant of 1, which is true, meaning I'm making these customers inactive. So those are the only 2 fields that I technically need. So in my source query, to make it a lot more efficient, instead of saying select star, just select the 2 fields you need. So just select the fields you name. So the less data you're returning back, the less extra overhead you're putting on the system, the faster the map's going to run. And we'll save that. And then we'll actually pull that same one up again. So a lot of times what I see people doing is there's a couple of different ways you can restrict your data. You can actually use within the mapping itself. There is a restrictions button at the top. Now this is basically a node restriction. So it's telling this specific node not to fire. So if I restrict this node, this wouldn't fire. So a lot of times what people do is you want to try to limit the data source at the source instead of using a restriction. So as an example, I'm going to do a restriction in here that I only want customers whose cust number starts with A. So I'm just going to do a quick if just try that again. So I'm going to do if my cust name, let's just make it simple and do if it equals. Okay, so here I have a restriction if the customer name equals Aaron Fitz, and this should return nothing because I don't believe I have a customer named that. So what I'm saying, if the customer names that, return true, else return false. So basically I only want to select this customer, right? So if I run this map now, so I've restricted at the node level and not at the source level. If I run this map now, you'll see it's still reading the entire data set of 198 records. And I got 198 successes. But basically what it did, it actually sent 197 blank documents, i.e. with no customer name on it, and 1 document that actually had data in it for the actual Aaron Fitz. So as you can see, it still evaluates every single record in the system when you use a restriction at the node level. So normally what you'd want to do is restrict it. So I'm just going to restrict this. We'll change this back to return true. So now I'll change at my query level. In this case, I should be just selecting where. Sorry, I used custom name in the other one, so. Okay, so I should not have any customers name that. So if I preview this, yeah, see, I don't have any customers name this. But if I run this, it's actually just going to say 0 records found because nothing met the criteria. No data was returned. So instead of sending 197 blanks and one with data in it, actually it restricted out everything. So it sent 198 blank documents to eConnect. But if I restrict it at the data source level, it doesn't send anything. So it's going to make your maps a lot more efficient. So typically avoid restrictions in the actual node mappings. So we'll use the same map again. So another thing I see a lot is people using, there's a feature in here called MSSQL Lookups, if you go to additional columns, where you can create lookups to retrieve values. So if I wanted to, I could create a MSSQL lookup on customer number to return the customer name and the address and the city, state, zip. The MSSQL lookup column is a one-to-one. Like I can pass in one field and I can return one field. So I could pass in cust number and get name. I can't pass in more than one field, and I can't retrieve more than one field. So it's a one at a time. So what will happen sometimes is people will have a map with, and each MSSQL lookup runs as it's needed. So if I have a map with, say, 7, 8, 9, 10 MSSQL lookups, for every single document that runs, it has to connect to SQL, do that lookup, and return the data. So it's doing 10 different calls out to SQL just to populate this one document because it goes out, gets what it needs, goes out, gets what it needs, goes out, gets what it needs. So the more lookups you have, the slower your map will go. This also applies to CRM. You use like entity lookups. CRM and Salesforce all use like entity lookups. And that's the same thing. If you have multiple entity lookups, it's going to make the map run slower because each one of those is a separate call. So typically what you want to do in cases like that is you want to actually change, and this will definitely break my map. You actually want to change the data source to a multi-data source, and this is definitely going to break my map. But what we do then is I'll actually demonstrate this one. So this is my RM 00101 lookup. So my first query was just getting those two values from, so my first query was just the select star from RM. And I broke my rule. I'm selecting more than I need. Okay, so I'll validate that. So this is a multi-data source. So what I'm going to do is I want to get all my SQL fields for that record at one time instead of getting them one at a time. So what I'm going to do is create a multi-data source where I'm going to link, this is my original data source, the ODBC connection to SQL. I'm going to link that to the actual SQL table. Well, customer, I'm just going to call it customer table. This time I am going to do a select star just because that'll give me more fields. So this is a destination in a different company. I'm taking customers out of one and putting them in the other. So now if I validate that and preview that, you can see so I have all my fields. So then what you do is you actually join those together. So this is my primary one that's looking at my RM101, my first company. And then here's my table, my destination company. So basically we're going to do cust number, Then I'm going to take all, I want to know all these fields because I want to pass these in. So instead of using MSSQL Lookup and passing in, I'm just going to use them like that. So if I go to my query now, go to my data, you can see this is the only field. These two fields are in my original data query. All the rest of these are coming from the MSSQL, basically the SQL table destination. So now I don't need to do, so here I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So here I'm retrieving 8 SQL fields at one time when the map runs. So it makes, and actually what it does one giant call and it puts all the data in like a memory table. And then it joins it with the other source query and basically creates a SQL temp table out of it. So it's literally doing one SQL lookup, getting the whole data set, instead of making 10 SQL lookups per document. So it's a way to make your data part of your source query. You know, since you were doing an MSSQL lookup or you're doing an entity lookup, instead of doing that, you join in the other entity and then you join those together to create the actual lookup. Because then you can pull the fields from both entities as if they natively existed in the first one.